We can vape if you want to. We can leave cigarettes behind. Cause our friends all vape, and if they don't vape, then they're no friends of mine.
Yeah, Vista Vapors. Visit them today at tinyurl.com/STSvape.
You can get one bottle of juice for 1 penny.
That's tinyurl.com/STSvape. Vista Vapors.
You can leave cigarettes behind.
Mysterious Productions. Let's get spunky. Let's do what we do. Gotta get your money by using that spunky tonight.
Shootin The Shiznit is sponsored by spunklube.com. Spunklube is an award-winning personal lubricant that's fun. Spunklube is available in 4 varieties: hybrid, pure silicone, natural, and pink. Place your order today at spunklube.com and tell them Shootin The Shiznit sent you.
Now, man, her being at it for a couple of rounds. When things got dry, man, I pulled out the tube. I gotta get her wet by using my spunk lube. Nice and smooth.
Blue Chew can now offer you the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis at a fraction of the price, discreetly delivered to your door. No waiting rooms, no appointments required, no embarrassing face-to-face meeting with your doctor. You're just minutes away from a heightened sex life.
Use promo code STS. Get your first month free. All you have to do is pay postage and handling. Now on with the show. Hey, we're live from STS Studios in St. Louis, Missouri. And man, I have been waiting ever since I confirmed that we was getting this guest on. I'm bringing him from the green room, Memphis Monroe. Welcome to the show, Memphis.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, we're doing good. Memphis, you are a huge star in this business. Got a lot of stuff that you did behind the scenes that a lot of people... I'm sorry, I said huge star. I meant mega star. Make sure I get that right. I love that. And make sure I get all this information. Some people are not going to know actually who you are. They're going to be surprised about all the stuff that you were involved in during your career. And I'm excited to say that me and you've been friends for a long time, and not a lot of people knew that. They didn't know that, Wrestling Riot, when I was running the site, that you was one of those guys I talked to on a regular basis, always gave me information. I know we're not going to kayfabe anybody on that now, but let me just say, guys, and I don't mean this disrespectful, but Memphis Monroe, you were one of my stooges, right?
Well, I mean, I'm a megastar. I don't ever be referred to as a stooge, but I was an informant, if you will.
Informant.
You with
there
valuable
we go.
information.
Yes, that's
I prefer to refer to it that way.
All right, I want to start with the very beginning. When did you become a wrestling? Just a fan, not actually being trained, but when did you become a fan? And can you remember the first matches you went to?
I don't remember a lot of dates. I've been hit in the head, quite a bit. Wrestling was real back when I started, and so. I remember going in Detroit, going to see the Sheik. That's where I grew up. That's where I was originally born. I don't usually like to tell that because, my whole gimmick's I'm from Memphis. And I did live in Memphis for years. But I can just remember going to see, like, the Sheik and Bobo Brazil and guys like that. And I figured, hell, I can do that. I mean, the guy's stabbing somebody with a pencil. He's throwing fireballs in people's faces. I was like, shit, I could do that. That seems like easy money right there.
Right, and you said it. So, at what point did you say? Because I know who trained you, so we'll go ahead. Tell the folks how you actually went up to the Sheik and all that become your training and everything.
Well, so I've tried approaching the Sheik several times, and of course he kayfabed me. He acted like he couldn't speak English and didn't know what I was talking about. And I kept going up and catching him behind the building at shows and saying, how can I be a wrestler? How can I be a wrestler? And he would mumble some gibberish, you know, that was supposed to be Iranian or Iraqi or whatever the fuck it was he was supposed to be. And so finally one day I just pulled out a wad of money, and all of a sudden his English got great. He knew exactly what I was talking about. And once I threw some dollar bills his way, next thing you know, I'm getting trained how to wrestle. And I mean, and it's not like there wasn't a performance center, there wasn't a power plant, there wasn't any of these wrestling schools. I mean, you know, Ed trained me in his living room, which, you know, the Sheik didn't take a lot of bumps, so that really wasn't something that he was too concerned with anyway. But, you know, he taught me all the basics, you know, how to choke, how to rake eyes, how to stab people with pencils. And he never would show me the fire gimmick, though. I had to learn that on my own years later. But he gave me the basics, like I say, there in his living room. You know, I paid him $2,000. We had about a good 30, 45-minute session there. And then I was on the card the following week.
Wow, that's awesome. And this, I mean, this explains a lot to me, and maybe some of the listeners that have seen you, that it's just, you're just not one of those guys that believes in bumping, right?
That's for marks, man. I'll taking all those bumps. I mean, it's good. You know, somebody has to, but that's not for me. You know, that's not my deal. You know, taking all those bumps and all that bullshit. That's for the underneath guys. You know, that's how you build a megastar, is off the backs of all these other guys who take the bumps and, you know, lose and shit like that. And, you know, and that's how guys like me go from a star to, you know, a superstar to eventually a freaking megastar. And you don't do that bumping, that's for sure.
Right. Now, Memphis Monroe, and you got the gimmick of Memphis always been in your name, and you started working around the Memphis area. But tell us about, you actually started working with the Poffos first, right?
I did. I went over there to their little outlaw show, ICW, over there around Kentucky, and Angelo, he was a tough old bastard, you know, and he gave me an opportunity, and you know, I got to know the family. You know, obviously they're running the promotion, so I would get there early and hang out with them some, and you know, I can remember, you know, being in the dressing room, and you know, I used to play checkers with his son Lanny, and never could beat the kid. Never could. He never put me over. And of course, then you had, you know, he had his son Randy Poffo, and you know, me and him would get out there and amateur wrestle sometimes, you know, in the ring before the shows. And he actually, Randy, even though he was so much, you know, younger and smaller than me, actually took me down a couple times, you know. And I used to tell Angelo, like, you know, that kid Lanny, he's a freaking genius. You know, Angelo, he kicks my ass with these chess rather. And I was like, Randy, man, he's just tenacious. Like he's really just a savage. And you know, I don't know if he really took that to heart or not, but That's what I used to say.
Hey, that's about the first time I knew there was still going to be, even though me and you'd be friends forever. Sometimes I have somebody on here that you tell me something I've never heard before. So wow, so you heard it first here on Shootin The Shiznit. And Memphis Monroe probably had a lot to do with the Lanny and them's gimmick and names afterwards. Now you work. I always say you worked in Memphis, but it was more like, you know, we talked to Forrest Putnam or Mark Southern and them, and it was almost like Lawler, Dundee, you know, all the big stars in the Memphis wrestling didn't want you to be part of Memphis wrestling, so it was almost like you were the outlaw megastar of the area. And while you were working in the Memphis area, they had what they called the first concession stand brawl, but you got another story about this, and I love this.
Well, I mean, for one thing, let's address this real quick. Yeah, Lawler and Dundee did not want me to take over Memphis, so that's why they always had me under a mask. Now, I know a lot of these people are going to be Googling right now, and you're like, well, I don't remember ever seeing Memphis Monroe wrestling in Memphis. Well, you wouldn't, because they always put me under some other kind of gimmick. I was always an assassin, or I was an intern, or I was a goddamn movie monster. I was Jason or Dr. Frankenstein or whatever. You know, they always hid me under a mask, and as soon as I started trying to get over, you know, they would take me out. They'd put somebody else in under the mask and then unmask them as if it had been them the whole time, and it hadn't been me, you know, building it up for the last 12 weeks. But anyway, so we're doing a show, and I finished the show, and of course, it's late. There's not going to be time to go out and catch any restaurants open. So I go to the concession stand, and I tell them I need a Coke and some nachos. And they hand me this little thing of nachos there, and it's got just a little bit of nacho cheese. And I'm like, hey,
hold on, Memphis. I want to make sure that and I love this. This is one of my connections to you. Where this happened was in Jonesboro, Arkansas. I absolutely love this. And it must have been one of those shows I missed. So I didn't see this happen, but I love this.
Yeah, it was. I remember it like it was yesterday, right there in Jonesboro. And so I tell them to put some more. I'll tell them, hey, put some more cheese on these nachos, damn it. And the guy gives me some lip, so I come around inside the concession stand there, and I slap him around a little bit. And a few more of the baby faces come in there. And next thing you know, I'm slamming them over the head with jars of mustard and throwing them through the wall. They ended up getting a lot of extra nacho cheese because I dumped it all over some kid. I don't remember his name. I'm sure he doesn't wrestle anymore. But yeah, we just completely destroyed that concession stand, and I got fined, $1,000 for it. And the next thing I know, 2 months later, they're down in Tupelo. Lawler and Dundee are out there with the Blonde Bombers, and they reenact the whole thing. And then people talked about it for, 30 years, like it was the most innovative thing to ever happen in wrestling, and they come up with it. And all it was is they were ripping off what happened to me in Jonesboro, a real-life situation.
Right. And that's, the thing you mentioned just a little bit. I mean, huge Lawler fan and Dundee fan. But the criticism of the younger guys coming into the business with Dundee and Lawler have always been that they didn't want anyone else to be a star. And if you guys take a moment and try to think of who actually, maybe Jeff Jarrett, maybe, Brian Christopher, those two guys had a really good run. And maybe I always say PG-13 because they no one wanted them to have a good run, but they ended up with a good run. But Lawler Dundee did a lot of pushing down. They wanted to stay the stars, so that's where you got it. And I guess I should have mentioned this first because it's kind of like before this happened. But you had also a thing with, and this may be the reason they never wanted you to be the megastar, is you had this deal with the scaffold match, which everyone talks about. And I actually talked to Jerry Jarrett about this on the show that he was on, but about the original scaffold match.
Yeah, see, Jerry won't talk about this because he almost got his ass sued off, and so now they've rewritten history to where it was him and Coco, but we actually had a scaffold match, and it was actually way taller than any of the other ones they've done before. It was like 40 feet above the ring. I'm pretty sure is what the exact measurement was.
Gee.
But we got up there and bumped around a little bit, and I bumped Jarrett around. I'm not bumping around, although he did eventually backdrop me off of the scaffold.
Oh,
and so they, at that point, we didn't really think about the whole, hey, you hang from the bottom and just drop down. So I come charging him. He hits me with a backdrop, and I ended up going out into about the third row. And then I know I'm not supposed to talk about this, but surely the statute of limitations is up. But yeah, I mean, like we get crippled like a couple of kids. They were pretty fucked up. And so Jarrett was freaking out. He's like, I'm going to get sued. I'm going to lose the promotion. But me being the salesman and smooth talker that I am, I went out. I talked to the parents. And when it was all said and done, they settled out of court. I think Jerry ended up having to give him about $80 cash, 4 hot dogs, 2 Cokes, and then just a few Polaroids with some of the boys.
Wow.
And the parents carted the kids out of there and moved on. And it never really came up again. But despite that, Jerry always thought that somebody else would take up the cause and try to make a big fuss about it and get it in the paper. So he wouldn't let me talk about it. So this right here is actually the first time ever, other than when I told you in confidence, and then you had to go and bring it up on the freaking podcast. This is the only time I've ever publicly told that story about the original first ever scaffold match. So,
and guys, I knew you. I know what you're going to do in the next few weeks. So not right now, but if you're listening to this anytime in the first week of July, guys, what you need to do is go to YouTube and do a search: Memphis Monroe crippling 2 kids. He'll put it up on YouTube. Let's take a quick commercial break and be right back. We're going to talk about your first gimmick, and also you got a big show coming this weekend. And we're going to talk about the Montreal Screwjob.
80s Tees is the leading online retailer of officially licensed t-shirts, specializing in retro movie, music, TV show, video games, comic book, and cartoon t-shirts. 80s Tees has you covered. They have everything from G.I. Joe, Seinfeld, and Back to the Future, as well as 152 different classic wrestling shirts. Plus, free shipping on all orders over $50. Visit them now at our link, tinyurl.com/STS80stees. That's tinyurl.com/STS80STEES. Visiting them at our link will cost you nothing extra, but it will help support this podcast. Now, back to the show.
This is your bedroom with Blue Chew. Blue Chew uses the same active ingredients as in Viagra or Cialis, but now comes in chewable form. Chewable means better, cheaper, and works faster than pills.
I've tried Cialis, I've tried Viagra. Blue Chew works the best. It's a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew has definitely gotten the job done.
No in-person doctor visit, no waiting in line, no more awkwardness.
Blue Chew allowed me to have more sexual freedom because it kicked in and worked faster.
Ordering Blue Chew is an absolute no-brainer for any man. Blue Chew makes my girlfriend, want to put up with me in bed.
I felt like I did when I didn't have ED.
Order online to get your first month free.
I want my girlfriend to want me, and with Blue Chew, she really does. Blue Chew is the future of manhood.
Go to BlueChew.com and restart the party. Or call 800-232-8803. 800-232-8803.
That's BLUE Chew.com. Promo STS, and you get to try it for free.
Wow.
I hear you.
Wow. Shootin The Shiznit is sponsored this month by spunklube.com. Spunklube is an award-winning personal lubricant that's fun. Spunklube is available in 4 varieties: hybrid, pure silicone, natural, and pink. The newest addition to the Spunklube family is Spunklube Pink. The pink formula is colorful and fun to use. It's a special hybrid formula that's non-sticky and non-staining. All of their products are shipped in discreet packaging from D Enterprises. Please go to spunklube.com and order a unique, fun-to-use personal lubricant.
All right, back from commercial. We do thank our sponsors there. Memphis Monroe. Memphis. Now, this is not politically correct, I could say, but what I want to do is I want to go back. You were talking about with the Sheik, and I want everyone to know what your first gimmick was before you put the mask on.
Well, okay, so I mentioned earlier some of the early matches as I remember seeing was Sheik and Bobo Brazil. Well, eventually they had a falling out. Bobo left the territory, left a hole in the roster, much like when JYD left Mid-South. But at the moment, Sheik didn't have any, I guess the politically correct term these days is African-American wrestlers to fill that void. So he had me, paint my face. I was in blackface, which wasn't, that was, I'm going to say appropriate, but it wasn't, unheard of back then. And called me Hobo Brazil, and I did a lot of Bobo spots. And I did that for probably about 7 or 8 months starting out. So that was my very first gimmick in wrestling.
Hobo Brazil. I'm sorry. I just think that's hilarious. I know it's not politically correct these days, but it's just so funny. Now, a big, huge thing, that all of a sudden this year has become a big deal. The Montreal screw job, because of the documentary they showed, in the TV show, Dark Side of the Ring. It's just brought up a lot of stuff about the Montreal screw job. And I remember when we first talked, and I know I had just got my podcast going and I couldn't get a lot of people to talk, but I told you I really wanted to talk about the whole thing that you had with Vince McMahon. And it goes into a lot of stuff. It goes it goes your relationship with Vince when you came up with some ideas, all the way into you leaving working for Vince, then going to Crockett. So we'll start right up front. I want you to talk to me about your conversation when you and Vince started talking about something that you came up with that you get no credit for, and I know none of the kayfabe sheets even know this, but the idea of WrestleMania.
Yeah, I had went to work for Vince in late '84 after I had left Memphis. After, like I say, I got tired of being held down and stuck under these masks, and so I went to work for Vince, and me and him were talking one day, and and he had Hulkamania was really kicking off and doing well, and I had seen in the past some of these promoters would get together and promote a big mega show in a large venue, and a lot of times that did really well. And so I told Vince, I said, well, Hulkamania is doing well. What if you put a big show together and you called it WrestleMania, and just brought in all the stars you can, get some Hollywood types. Like, I got some friends in Hollywood, I can make some calls, and just really go all out. And I said, Piper's pretty hot right now. What if you put me and Piper together and we wrestle Hulk Hogan and we'll round up some celebrity. I'm like, look, TV right now, the A-Team's hottest show on television. Mr. T's a huge star. What if you brought Mr. T in? Like, I could teach him a few things enough that he could, get by in a match. And he loved the idea. And yes, he is the one that monetarily took the gamble. But I mean, I'm the one that spent all those hours in the gym training Mr. T. I'm the one that thought of this. And when the push come to shove, he stuck Orndorff in my spot. He ends up slapping, just like in Memphis, slaps a mask on me, calls me the freaking executioner, and I'm jobbing out the freaking Tito Santana in the opener while Orndorff's in my spot in the main event of WrestleMania. And I never forgot that. I never forgave Vince for that.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that Vince does everything for Vince and Vince only, and all the way to now, where everybody thinks, Vince, it's time for him to retire. And you... I love this, but you kind of got your revenge on Vince because of the WrestleMania thing. So go ahead and tell that story real quick.
I did. I was having a drink in a bar with Eddie Mansfield. Of course, he wasn't in WWF at the time, but we ran across each other in an airport, and we went to the airport bar and sat down, and he was telling me about how he was getting screwed over, by Ole Anderson and some of them over there in Georgia. And I was telling him about, the shit I was dealing with Vince. And he said, I'm just about ready to just get out of the business. And I wish I had some kind of way that I could just stick it up their ass on the way out. And I said, well, if you really wanted to stick it up their ass, I said, you go on one of these TV news shows and just expose the business. I said, just show how it's all done. Show how they... everything from how we take a bump, how we do moves, to how we bleed. And he laughed, and he said, well, wouldn't that be something? And I said, yeah. I said, it would be something. You ought to do it. And, we were both half lit, so I didn't think much of it. And then next thing you know, I was at a show. I don't remember if we were at Madison Square Garden. I don't know. I just know that I was told, hey, John Stossel, that guy from 2020 is here, and he's going around asking the boys about wrestling being at work. And so I was over there with David Schultz, and I said, Dave, I said, I'd double dog dare you to just slap the shit out of that little bastard if he comes asking you about wrestling's fake. And he laughed, and he said, I'll do it. He said, he comes ask me, I will. I'll slap this dog shit out of him. I said, you won't do it. I said, you ain't got a hair on your balls if you don't do it. And sure enough, that ended up being one of the guys that he questioned. And true to his word, David Schultz, of course, famously slapped him up both sides of the head, busted his eardrums, and ended up blackballing himself out of the business. And luckily for me, he was man enough and nice enough to keep my name out of it when all of it went down, and he quietly exited the company. But yeah, I don't think if I hadn't double dog dared him like that, I don't know that Schultz would have done it. So I kind of feel responsible, but I don't think Dave lost any sleep about it. He went on to have a pretty big career as the bounty hunter, made a lot of money, and then of course I ended up quitting WWF not long after that, and went down to work for the Crockett's as resuming my role as one of the assassins, like I had done in Memphis.
Right. Well, you did. You had some stuff in for Crockett, JCP there, but before that, you actually went after the Crockett run. You went back to the WWE because Hulk Hogan talked to you, and this is around '86. This is when we started. I started tape trading around this time. So in 1986, and here's really something funny. When you start talking about the machines here, that mask that I used as the BT Express was Super Strong Machine mask, which no one knows this. I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody. I got it from you after all of this. So go ahead and tell what happened. Hulk talks you back into coming to the WWE, right?
Well, there's two factors here. One, my buddy Hulk had called me up and was wanting me to come back, but I had kind of a situation. I needed to get the hell out of Jim Crockett Promotions because I had, me, I always keep a really nice car, and so I had this Porsche, and I was having some issues with it. It was having some brake issues, and I'd had it in about 5 different shops. I never could get these brake issues worked out, so I sold it to another wrestler, and there were some things went on. I don't really want to go into all that, but I felt like it was probably time for me to get the hell out of there. Let's just say after selling off my Porsche with the bad brakes, and just so happens,
I want to go ahead and say allegedly bad brakes because I don't
allegedly.
I don't want people thinking that some wrestler that worked for Crockett had a bad car wreck and on a rainy road going 90 miles an hour was your fault. I mean, and we're not going to say any names. I'm kayfabing people on that if you can't. And we're saying allegedly. So yeah. So we had a Porsche that had allegedly bad brakes.
Yeah, I mean, I had just had some bad experiences with them, but I'm sure they were in fine working condition by the time this gentleman took them. But anyway, let's not dwell on that. So Hulk Hogan had given me a call because I had discovered Hogan in at a bar down there playing some shitty band in Florida, and I was like, hey, you're a big bastard, you ought to go get trained to wrestle. And he took me up on that, and then, of course, everybody knows the story about Hiro Matsuda and all that. I won't tell that, but he told me, he said, man, I need you up here. I need a favor. I know you're the only one that can do it, and I will get Vince McMahon to pay you $1 million a year if you'll come up here to WWF. I know you hate Vince. I know y'all got heat. He said, if you'll come up here, I'll get him to pay you. You can be under a mask. You can be one of these machines. It's going to be one of the biggest, angles they got going throughout the year of 1986. If you can convince, because see, they knew this way far in advance. They knew when Hogan was wrestling Bundy at WrestleMania 2, they knew next year they wanted to have the biggest WrestleMania ever at WrestleMania 3, and they wanted to do Hogan versus Andre. The problem was they didn't think they could convince Andre to turn heel, and on top of that, they sure as hell didn't think they could convince Andre to put Hogan over. But I had known Andre. I had worked with him back when he come through Detroit for the Sheik. I was the guy that would drive him around the towns, and we would drink together, and I knew him pretty well. And sometimes if I had to get physical with him, Andre, he knew better than to try me because he knew I was a shooter from way back. So comes around time for WrestleMania. I told Andre, I said, look, you need to do what's good for business. I did convince him to turn heel. That was easier than we thought. But then when it come time to put Hogan over, he was a little sketchy about that. And then when I said, I want Hogan to body slam me, I think that's really going to sell it. He started raising hell because he was about 14 bottles in on the wine that day and got a little rowdy and flipped over his table where he was playing cards. And I had to just about damn near choke him out to get him to agree to take the slam. But, after I slapped him around a little bit, put him in the sugar hole, got him down on the ground, he eventually agreed to take the body slam, put Hogan over. And that's how Memphis Monroe saved WrestleMania.
Wow. Yeah, I love that story. That's been told. And then I want to real quick, we'll go over your last run in the WWE, or apparently you was going to be your last run, the time that you was there. And I don't know, you probably may have spent some more time backstage, but it was, and no, you was going to be the third brother of destruction, right?
That was the plan. They wanted to lend some credibility to Kane and Undertaker because they thought that, those characters had gotten a little bit cheesy. And they thought, if they could bring me in, I'd lend a bit of old school credibility, to the characters and kind of ground them a little bit. But because I had been in the business for so long and had been behind the scenes, before we got to that point in the storyline where it was time for, the third brother to come in, they wanted me to sit in on some creative meetings and give some input. And, kind of like in that same situation with Andre, if I needed to, pimp slap somebody around a little bit, make them do business, then, that's what we needed to do. And so I was sitting in the day that, and it's, God knows it's been talked about over the years, and it's really been talked about, like you mentioned, because of this damn documentary. As up till then, so many people tried to take the credit or point the finger at whose idea it was to pull the screw job in Montreal. And I've known all along, obviously. Well, that day they were haggling. Brian, they had spent hours upon hours calling back and forth. Would you do this? And then, Brett would pitch this, and they would pitch this to Brett, and then back and forth, and all these things to try to get the championship belt off of Brett. Brett doesn't want to lose because he's in Canada. Just all this stupidity, just bullshit. And finally, I just looked at Cornette. We'd walked outside. I was having a smoke break because I was about to have a nicotine fit sitting in this room listening to these clowns argue about a title belt. And I looked at Cornette and I was like, why the hell would you not just double cross them? And Cornette goes, how did we do that? And so I essentially laid out to Cornette the exact finish that you saw take place in Montreal at Survivor Series. And he went back in the room and pitched it. And pretty much Cornette's account of things is dead on. He just leaves out the fact, and I'm sure he considers it a favor to me to not get my name in the headlines and me getting called by, all these so-called wrestling journalists bothering me. So he just, said it came from him. But truth is, I'm the one that told him. I'm the one that laid it out. And then it ended up happening. But, yeah, that's the truth. That the Montreal screw job would have never happened had I not pitched that whole scenario to Jim Cornette, who then pitched it to Vince.
Wow. And in the end part of this, so it's because of all this, The Undertaker actually found out that you had it was your idea and told Vince he didn't want you part of him and Kane, right?
Yeah, that got the whole angle shit canned because while it didn't really get out in the dirt sheets and all that, Cornette was pretty good friends with Undertaker, and he mentioned it to him, and Taker just lost his shit. And me and him got in a pretty heated argument about it, and he ended up with a fucking black eye over it, but I ended up getting fired, so I guess he won in the end.
All right, we're getting close to the end. What I want you to do, Memphis, is I want you to. You got a special event coming. It's coming up this Saturday night, right?
Yeah, Sunday. It'll be this Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon.
It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's an event for $5 wrestling. You can come see it live in Charlotte this Sunday. Otherwise, it'll be airing on the High Spots Network in a few weeks. It'll be out on DVD and Blu-ray and all that good stuff. But I'm going to be coming in and challenging $5 heavyweight champion Freight Train. Of course, Freight Train it was a phenomenon in wrestling in the past few years. He's what caused $5 wrestling to blow up and become as popular as it did. And Freight Train, quite the inspirational story. A guy who had tried for years to get involved in the wrestling business, and due to a lot of his challenges was not accepted, and then finally Jake Manning created $5 wrestling, and he blew up, and to the point that he even got to travel. They booked him in England, and he went and had some matches over in the UK, and just beloved by everyone. And unfortunately for him, megastar Memphis Monroe is coming to Charlotte Sunday, and I'm going to take his $5 wrestling heavyweight title, and I'm going to be the sad ending to his inspirational story.
Wow. So be in Charlotte this Sunday afternoon. Memphis Monroe, and if you are you listening to this podcast before you go to Charlotte, just reach out to Memphis and just tell him you heard about all of his history here on Shootin The Shiznit. For the Patreon members, we're going to talk about a few other things. I'm just going to tease them here. We're going to talk about Shawn Michaels, Chris Benoit, and a conversation that you had with Paulie Dangerously. I want to thank you, Memphis Monroe. Thank everyone for listening. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Before you end this, I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off, but can I clear up one thing real quick that's out there?
Sure.
There is a vicious, ugly rumor, and I know your listeners are probably going to buy into this because if they listen to your shows, they hear this guy on your shows because y'all got that Did You Really Like It or whatever the fuck that podcast is called y'all do.
Right, yeah.
This guy, Gene Jackson, apparently we sound a lot alike. I know the guy. We've worked together on some things. There's all this speculation out there that Memphis Monroe is just this Gene Jackson guy in a mask. And I just want to put that to rest. That's bullshit. I mean, like I say, I know the guy. We've been on shows together. I'm friends with him to a degree. I think he's a bit of an asshole. I mean, here I am, a freaking megastar. He's just some clown. What's he ever done? He's made shitty podcasts and wrote kayfabe shit on little websites and stuff. And he thinks he's important enough to be mentioned in the same breath with Memphis Monroe. Are you fucking kidding me? So I want all that rumor and innuendo and all the bullshit to get squashed right now. Memphis Monroe and Gene Jackson are very much two separate people, and I know you can confirm that as well as anybody because you've known me for a hell of a lot longer than you've known that guy.
That's true, and his opinions of Gene Jackson are Memphis Monroe's opinions, not mine, Gene, so remember that. As I was saying, same bad time, same bad channel on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there! And as everyone knows, and Memphis Monroe probably knows this, but I love my mama. Thank you, Memphis. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Man, you made it awkward there at the end about Gene.
Graphic design is very important. Your logo is the first image potential customers see. What kind of impression would you want to make today? Need a podcast logo or a t-shirt design? KT does art. Her name has become synonymous with quality and professionalism in the graphic design community. She specializes in graphic design, painting, and more. She provides affordable commissions and professional quality with a timely delivery. Contact KT via email at kt_doesart@yahoo.com. Check out her Instagram at instagram.com/kt_doesart.
That was another great episode of Shootin The Shiznit. Looking for contestants for Who Wants to Be the Best Shiznitter Ever? That's right, contact me and be a contestant on Who Wants to Be the Best Shiznitter Ever. A big shout out to our sponsors this month. Also, remember, we have a Patreon for only $1. That's patreon.com, Shootin The Shiznit without the G. A special thanks to Bob McGee at Pro Wrestling's Between the Sheets, Gene Jackson at locals2legends.com, and Sean Garmer at Wrestling to Max website. You can reach me on Comic Book Mark BT on Twitter, at BT Shootin The Shiznit on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook with a Shootin The Shiznit Facebook page. We have the Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk Facebook group. If we don't like you, we'll kick you out, but you also have to ask to get in. All the archives are at www.stspod.club. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, Podcast Addict, Spreaker, Spotify, and all the fun podcast players. Podcast Roll Call. A big shout out to Creative Control. Keeping it 100. Memphis Memories with Randy Hales and my buddies over there at P3 Radio, Max and Josh. Guys, I am Brian Tramel. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.